Okay. Good evening, everybody. We are very honored to have with us Pesach Glaser for our Tuesday night discussions with fascinating people. And I invited Pesach on because this Thursday night is Yud Tes Kislev, the 19th of Kislev, which we're going to talk about its significance. And Pesach has written a book, and you can see this book. It's available for purchase on Amazon. There it is, Reb Shneimur Zalman of Liadi, the Alter Rebbe, and the history of Chabad by our very own local Reb Pesach Glaser. I'm going to put the link to the Amazon uh, site in the chat here. And if people want to purchase this book after they hear so much about it tonight, this will be available for them. So, Reb Pesach, thank you very much for taking some time to join us. We really appreciate it. Welcome to our Tuesday night chats with fascinating people.
Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So we see you wrote this book. Now we know you're a busy man. You got a job. You have a family, Baruch Hashem. Let's take a little bit of background. What prompted you and when, and give us a little bit of a timeline if you could. What prompted you to become an author? Was this always an aspiration of yours? Have you written other books? Give us a little background, a little feel for what prompted you to write this book.
Well, when my children were young, they were always quite eager to hear stories about the Sadiqim, and I used to read to them, bedtime stories and whatever I could get my hands on, and uh, and then I became aware somehow of these tapes that Rabbi Majeski had recorded of uh, tapes of I think it's called the history of Chabad, and he did tapes and stories about the um, five of the Lubavitcher Rebbeim, and so I listened to those tapes, and I enjoyed listening to the tapes, and there were lots of stories, and I told those stories at the Shabbos table, and then I started also telling them in Shul by the Kiddush and Farbrengen, and the rabbi would always, and it became a weekly thing, to tell a story of the Rebbeim by the Kiddush Farbrengen. And a lot of those stories were about the Alter Rebbe. And actually, I think the thing that, I was thinking about it in advance, that 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 actually prompted me to write the book was that I couldn't remember where to find a certain story. And I actually called up Rabbi Majeski and asked him where to find that story. And it happened to be a story that had to do with the Alter Rebbe, but except that he told me, well, I could find that particular story in on a tape that had to do with the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he made some kind of remark like he wished that one of his students would make an index of all of the tapes and all of the stories, and I guess that planted the seed in my mind that maybe I would be the one at least to start writing um, this book about the Alter Rebbe.
Well, wonderful. You saw a need and you decided to act. So, what is the process? Is this merely transcribing the tapes? I mean, I guess looking around, I guess everybody here knows what a tape is. We're kind of
Oh,
dating ourselves there. But give us a little bit of how many years ago did you decide to do this? What was the process you went through to put these down? Did you do other research? Did you just listen to the stories? Did you take any creative liberties? Did you have anyone else that you consulted with for the authority of these stories? When you put it down on paper, you're making yourself vulnerable. So if you could walk us through that process, that would be fascinating.
well, um, part of the process was in fact transcribing from and by the way, I said tapes. I used the term loosely. I think it was on uh, a CD-ROM, if you remember what that was.
Oh boy, we may have to
Now
Google that.
now you can listen. What?
We may have to Google what CD-ROM is, but we get the
Yeah,
idea.
right. It was like the next thing after an actual audio tape. Those recordings anyone can listen to now. They're on Chabad.org. And you just click on the click on the link and you can listen to this recording. Um, but the process of writing the book was that I would you know, it's difficult to transform from an well, an oral recording is different than written. It's a lot different, and you so I first I had to transcribe, and then I had to edit, and I had to make what was an oral recording into a written form. And there was a lot of research. There was a considerable amount of research involved in because some of there were um, references that I put into into the book for Torah references that Rabbi Majeski would say a verse from or from the Torah, and I would look it up and I would translate it and I would put it the reference in the book.
Did Rabbi Majeski, did he know you were writing the book? Did he participate? Was he happy? What was he? Did he have any other involvement other than that offhanded comment? Or were there other expert scholars that you consulted with?
Rabbi Majeski, I believe, was um, probably happy that I was doing it. He's a busy man and he has all sorts of other things that he's involved in, and he didn't really get involved in writing the book. I did ask his permission to to use his material since I was worried or I was concerned that I didn't want to infringe in any way on his copyright uh, rights. Um, although he he informed me that in fact the copyright did not belong to him anymore. He had sold or transferred it to uh, the organization called Sichas in English, and so then I corresponded with Rabbi Avson Oliver Shalom, and he did give me permission to use it in any way that I wanted to.
So how long of a project was this? I mean, just give us some facts and figures. How many pages is this book approximately? How many stories are there? And how long did it take you to put this down and say, okay, it's done?
Well, actually, I meant to have the book in front of me so that I could refer to it if necessary, but it's I didn't do that, and I would say it's between 200 and 300 pages. Um, it it was it took me quite a long time because uh, I
That's here 300 pages.
oh okay um, that sounds about right. Um, it took quite a long time, as is any written work. There's a lot of versions and a lot of edits and it probably and also like you said, I mean, I had a full-time job. I and I had a family and a bunch of small children. So wasn't like I could work on it full time. And there were probably long periods of time when I didn't work on it at all. Um,
You remember
so
when you started, like approximately what year it was when you got started?
I don't really remember so well, but I'm just guessing, that it might have been 20 years ago, and and it was over maybe, you know, uh worked on it for 10 years, between
Wow.
5 and 10 years, and finally I was encouraged by certain people to just, get it published. In fact, one of my sons, Schneer Zalman, he actually got the ball rolling because he he was had some experience in publishing things, and he actually published the first book,
Wow.
first version. Um, and then I did it through, and then after that I did it through Amazon just because it was the easiest way to get it into book form and get it distributed.
And everyone can see the link to the Amazon. So, at a personal level, how did writing this book sort of affect you as a chassid, as your understanding of the Alter Rebbe, your understanding of Hasidus? How did the book writing experience penetrate and personally change you?
Well, I certainly became more knowledgeable about the life and experiences of the Alter Rebbe. Um, it was a very educational experience.
Did you find that it changed your understanding of the Alter Rebbe's message, in addition to giving you information about his life and his events? Did it help you understand the Alter Rebbe's philosophy that he was trying to bring to the world?
I'm I'm not sure I know how to answer that. Uh,
Anything, any story that jumped out and you said, wow, that really isn't something I would have anticipated, really sort of caught you by surprise. Not just that it was the most interesting, but something that you wouldn't have anticipated the Alter Rebbe would have done or said, and so on.
well, the that story that I mentioned earlier, that I had to call Rabbi Majeski up to find out where I could find it, because I had heard it before. I knew the story from the tapes. I just didn't know where to go back to find it. And so I'll say, just that little story um, might might be an answer to your question, which is that um, when the Alter Rebbe um, had to leave from the town where he was living to flee from Napoleon's army. That town was Liadi. His grandson uh, Menachem Nachum was sitting in the lead wagon, and the procedure was that the Alter Rebbe would when they would get to a fork in the road, the Alter Rebbe would give a signal to Menachem Nachum uh, to of which way they should go, and and uh, and then Menachem Nachum would tell the soldiers or the driver of the wagon or whichever which way to go. So they got to one fork in the road, and there was some kind of miscommunication, and Menachem Nachum gave the wrong direction to the driver, and they ended up because of that wrong direction that he gave, they ended up going out of their way, and eventually it led to the Alter Rebbe passing away because he got sick on that trip, and it took him a lot longer than they had expected, and the Alter Rebbe made some remark like, "Fortunate is um, uh, the grandson who goes in the ways of his grandfather, but the opposite is not the case." Um, and for his entire life after that, um, it was known that Menachem Nachum was kind of bitter and sad about the whole incident. And later in life, he moved and left his family and went and spent all of his time by the Alter Rebbe's in the town where the Alter Rebbe's grave was.
Cottage.
Right. So one time, uh, but it never was really clear, and he kind of kept it to himself of why he had moved there and why he was bitter, and one time uh, he he divulged to the Chassidim after they prompted him. They said, "Is it because you gave that wrong signal?" And he said, "No, it wasn't that's not the reason why I'm bitter, and why I wanted to be close to the Alter Rebbe as I've gotten quite older." And so he said that when he was a young man and before he got married, he went into the Alter Rebbe to ask him for a bracha, and the Alter Rebbe didn't like this certain coat that he was wearing. The coat, it was called a katinka, and it had a fur collar. And the Alter Rebbe, and that was the style of the day. It was very stylish. And uh, and the Alter Rebbe asked Nachum, "Can I make a patch in the collar, like cut it, like so that he would have to fix it and have a patch, so there would be a flaw in this fur collar of this fashion coat." And Menachem Nachum said, "No, I don't want a patch." And the Alter Rebbe said, "How about I'll learn with you every day if you make the patch." And Menachem Nachum declined. He said, I don't want a patch." And then the Alter Rebbe like persuaded him. He said, "Well, I'll promise you a place in the world to come right next to me." And so
Oh,
reluctantly, Menachem agreed. But he told the Hasidim that it was he felt this bitterness in his heart that he had, because he had been reluctant to agree to the Alter Rebbe's request about this fashionable coat. And the punchline is that when I asked Rabbi Majeski where to find that story, because I looked for it in all of the stories of the Alter Rebbe, and it just wasn't there. And he told me, he said, "Well, you can find that story in the stories of the Rebbe Rashab, because there was a similar story when the Rebbe Rashab got married to his cousin, the Rebbetzin Shterna Sarah. She went, the, when they came back from their wedding, uh, the Rebbe Rashab told her she should go into his father, the Rebbe Marash, and ask for a bracha. And so the thing was, she went into the Rebbe Marash, and she was wearing this stylish hat with a feather in it. And it was the same idea that the Rebbe Marash gave her a bracha, but he asked her to take the feather out of the hat. And that was the tie-in to the story about Rabbi Nachum and the Katinka. And I guess the story the stories um, illustrated the idea that the of maybe that being in the style of the day wasn't really the important thing.
Fascinating. Interesting. So these great little insights, these tidbits of family discussions become a model and an insight into the Alter Rebbe's mission and mission statement and vision for the world. Okay, we want to thank Rav Pesach for writing his book. Again, the link for the Amazon is in the chat. It's here on the screen and filled with these stories, 300 pages of them. And as we're coming up to Yutes Kislev this Thursday night, a great opportunity to add this to your library. And especially like Rav Pesach himself began by reading this to his family, you can begin by reading it to your family and a wonderful addition to your Shabbos table. So if anybody wants to unmute for a moment, we want to be respectful of Rav Pesach's time and jump in with a question. That'd be great. Otherwise, we'll say goodnight and thank you. And we'll see you tomorrow night. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Pesach, for your time. And
Thank
again,
you
we'll
for
have
having
class
me.
tomorrow night, and then Thursday night is the Farbrengen, then we'll be off for Hanukkah, and we'll be back the week after that. Okay. Good night, Yasher Koach. Thank you so much.
Night.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Bye.